Your question. Hello everybody, thanks for joining us for the 5th day of Conversation 2020. Today's theme is flexibility, and how fitting because those of us who are in France are locked down again, and many of you around the world are also in some sort of lockdown. So we're all using our skills for flexibility in our professional and personal lives. And so today we're going to have the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more for the business context. We've all used the word agility way too much in the last few months, years probably. It's a buzzword that's been overused, but really when you look beyond the buzziness of the word, it's really important for companies to be able to react to those government restrictions, to the new behaviors of shoppers that are changing constantly. And so really flexibility is hugely important. We need tools that are adaptable and flexible. We need uses of these tools to also be flexible, and we need companies to have cultures that reflect this. And so today we have 4 different sessions that are going to help us explore this topic. First, I'm going to have the honor a little bit later to welcome Ken Hughes, who offers an analysis of consumer shopper, cyber shopper behavior. He is well known around the world, but I'll have an opportunity to introduce him a little bit more in just a moment. He will talk to us about what flexibility means for companies today. And then immediately after that first session, he's going to be available for us for a live Q&A, so do stay on and ask your questions after this. Now, one of the trends that we've noticed over the last few months is brands are really engaging in D2C in direct engagement with their end customers. This is something that benefits customers, but can also benefit brands and retailers alike. We are going to have our following session, the third session, is going to be one that will be held between Gabriel, one of my colleagues from iAdvise, and Adrian, who's from Texel. And the two of them are going to discuss and introduce to you a new program that we've put together that allows retailers and brands to collaborate on websites to better their e-commerce together. And this, so this is the third session that we're going to have. Another trend that we noticed and that we talked about 2 weeks ago during the travel industry exploration that we did, if you missed any of those sessions, do go to our website, the conversation.iadvise.com website. All the on-demand sessions are available. But one of the key takeaways that came out of these sessions is that chatbots are hugely, hugely important for the travel industry today. As you can imagine, there was a spike in demands and questions and inquiries from customers. And so chatbots were used quickly to respond to those changing needs and increased needs very quickly. So my colleague Jeremy will come on stage to discuss how to best utilize the iAdvice platform and how our new AI innovation that we talked about a few weeks ago is going to come into play as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Ken Hughes.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Ken, how are you doing?
I am very good. I'm delighted to be here on your countertop. I'm kind of tempted to turn around and make myself a cocktail.
Well, it's a great space for that, although we only have coffee machines here, so cocktails next year.
Not good.
And you were at Conversation 2019 last year here in Nantes.
It was a fantastic event. I remember that, and I'm really sorry that we're not all there in person. I'm sure we will be next year.
Maybe
but
2021.
I'm delighted to be invited back and honored the invitation to be here for our Conversation 2020.
Yeah, glad that you're here. How are things going? You're in Cork, is that right now? Is that right?
I'm in Cork, south of Ireland. It's a beautiful autumnal day here. We're in our second wave of lockdown, like many people are in Europe at the moment.
Indeed.
So it's been interesting. As a consumer behaviorist, I guess I've probably been one of the only people who have woken up every morning of the pandemic excited to see what changes are happening. I mean, literally, we've been watching consumer values change month by month, week by week sometimes.
Sure.
So as we emerge into the second lockdown, the US election results kind of bubbling away there. So we're going to see definite social impact. There's going to be a certain amount of unrest. We're looking at Christmas being brought forward by 4 weeks in terms of people's spending. There's a lot of stuff going on. So it's an exciting time, you know.
Right, absolutely. So much to discover, so much to see. You've already started to introduce yourself in this, so this is perfect. But I'll introduce you a little bit more to our audience so they have a better idea who you are if they haven't done their research yet. And then after that, I'll give the stage over to you so that you can tell us more about that. So as you said, you're a consumer and shopper behavioralist. You've traveled around the world, maybe not this year, but in previous year, traveled around the world to share your insights and your ideas on strategy to help companies in defining their strategies. Prior to this, you were CEO of a consumer insights agency. And so you were able to work with well-known companies and provide them, again, with your support and your knowledge in consumer psychology, shopper immersion, digital anthropology, retail, all these tools that give you the ability to analyze trends and then to predict the future also a little bit. I browsed through your website a little bit, and some of the keywords that stood out were millennials, Gen Z, digital natives, all these terms, as well as consumer behavior, why shoppers buy, marketing trends, frictionless CX, all these different topics, which is fantastic because we've got a broad audience, and so you'll be able to address lots of different topics that will answer all their needs, I'm sure. Before we go on to letting you present all the information that you've prepared for us, I want to remind our audience also that we have a Q&A that will be live immediately after this session. So stay on to this page right where you are, whether that's LinkedIn or our conversation website. Stay on, ask all your questions to Ken. I'm sure you've got lots, and I'm sure you'll have even more during our conversation. I think that's it. Now, Ken, are you ready to take on the stage and talk to us about how flexibility has become the competitive advantage? Let's do this.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. I called this presentation Better Bend Than Break. How flexibility has become the new competitive advantage. And I really think that this year, more than any, that is so true. We are in a world of a masked marketplace. We have no idea what's happening behind that consumer's face, whether they're smiling, whether they're having a positive customer experience. And really the point of this presentation is to equip you with some understanding of the values of what it means to run an agile, flexible company today and how we can put a smile on that customer's face behind that mask. So when the pandemic struck, I became fascinated by the idea of a captive economy. The idea that as consumers, we were all trapped at home, businesses closed, the whole thing globally, everyone was in the same situation. And of course, with a new situation, socially, politically, technically, economically, comes new consumer values. And any business or brand needs to connect with our consumers. We need to maintain that conversation. And of course, to have a relevant conversation, you have to understand what consumers value. I've looked at change for 5, 6, 7 years now, looking at it all over the world, many industries, and of course the disruptive change that's happening today is disruption to the power of C19. So we have a condition where behaviorally, no matter what class, no matter what race, no matter what social class or creed you are, no matter where you are in the world, you're being affected and by the same forces that everybody else is as well. And I love this quote, standing still is the fastest way of moving backwards in a rapidly changing world. And it's so true today. So just because you think you're standing still and you're coping, unfortunately your competitors and the environment around you is changing so fast that you actually end up moving backwards. So really the flexibility that we're going to talk about today is inherent in not only surviving but thriving for the future. And old ways of working don't open any new doors. I use that quote all the time, all over the world. It's always been true and never more so than today. If you whisk back 7 or 8 months, you remember, this was how we lived our lives, for instance, in terms of coping as consumers. These were images out of a Spanish supermarket in the very beginning when people didn't have masks and they made their own. This is agility from a consumer point of view. It was a strange new world we lived in. We were all told to work from home. That was easy for some of us in the white collar industries, but obviously for pilots, archaeologists, and my favorite there on the screen, lifeguards, it wasn't so easy working from home. And in fact, if you had kids, of course, working from home is even harder. You had them sellotaped to the floor to try and actually get some work done. And of course, if you didn't do that, if you left your kids to your own devices, they will get up to their own mischief. We know children, and children will always find a way to annoy you. And of course, if you left them onto their own devices, they would just colour in whatever substance or surface they could find, whether that was the dog or the bathroom floor. And so, it was a strange new world for us all. But here we are now out the other side of that pandemic, and while those 6 months kind of seem like a long time ago, here we are now in what I call the masked marketplace. And from a customer experience point of view, of course, there are inherent new values at play, and we need to understand those if we're to optimize our customer experience. Now, recovery is a word that people use a lot. When will it get back to normal? When will we have the same world that we used to have? And people are fascinated, particularly in business, by the way, of a V-shaped recovery. We like V-shaped recoveries because we know them from the equity stock market and we know the shape of them. But of course, we're unlikely to have a V-shaped recovery. We thought we would in the beginning of this, but we now know we won't. I was trying to find a shape for the recovery early on in the conversation, and I settled on this. This is an old Irish fishing boat that's used off the west coast of Ireland, a very traditional fishing craft. It's called a currach. It has a very low, stable base to cope with all those Atlantic waves. So I thought that was a great shape for the recovery, because actually what had happened in the sudden collapse economically and behaviourally, we had a huge change. And then I was looking at maybe a potential 12 to 8 month recovery, or 12 to 24 month recovery. And that's the base of that boat. And eventually we get back to where we were. Now, of course, I realised that was even naive of me back in April and May when I wrote this blog, because actually what you're looking at there on the screen is the probable reality of the recovery. We're going to have a very ebb and flow recovery. We're going to have a spaghetti recovery. We're going to have a recovery that we need to actually move backwards in order to go forwards. And as we're speaking today, many cities and countries all over the world are entering their kind of second phase of lockdown, their significant lockdowns, to try and get a hands on this virus again. So I think the recovery is going to not be a linear one, and therefore from a customer experience point of view, we really have to gear up here for a longer conversation to get back to that new normal than we perhaps had thought. This is going to be a roller coaster ride for us. And just like a roller coaster, sometimes you will go upside down. And sometimes upside down is scary, but sometimes upside down can be thrilling. Sometimes you move backwards on one of the roller coasters and you think, what's happening? But actually, it's all part of the ride. And I think in business, we need to get used to this idea and be able to also benefit from the moments where we need to go backwards and upside down. And to tie in with the theme of today's speech, to bend not break, here's a quote that I like because I made it up myself. Strength and success come from your ability to be shaped by the external forces that challenge you. So if you look at that tree, as nature and natural forces bore down on that as it grew, it shaped itself around those forces. And that's what we need to do. We need to bend and to be agile and flexible around what's happening to us and benefit from better conversations. During the summer, I met a lifeguard on a beach and he was teaching my kids about rip currents. And I also thought that was a great way of thinking about this pandemic. A rip current will carry you out to sea very quickly. And most people, of course, will try and fight against the current to get back to the shore, to get back to what they know, to get back to safety. We all know that safety is not a good place for business growth and expansion. What you need to do to fight a rip current, to survive it, is to swim sideways, to swim out of the current. And once you're out of the current, of course, you can make your way back to the shore. If you take that metaphor for your business, what you need to do is to look for new opportunities and new directions, new ways of moving in your current business space. If you stay in the same place and try and do the same thing, of course, you're not going to make much progress. You need to move off in different directions. And that's what agility ultimately is all about. Agility is about the ability to kind of rip off the white shirt and let the superhero out, and to think more creatively, think more innovatively, think about how you connect with customers in different ways, in more significant, creative ways. That's what the game is about today. Look for the opportunity in amongst the current business models that you're running. So, we come from a world where conversation is natural for us. And of course, during the pandemic, a lot of natural social interaction moved onto a digital platform. So we went from a social isolation place. And social isolation, of course, bred a significant move to digital conversation. Now, I'll talk about digital later on as one of the core step jump values that we're experiencing in today's economy. But you have to understand that really the social isolation forced a significant digital conversation to happen. And that was true, of course, between people. We saw messaging explode all over the world, but also for brands to have conversations with consumers on a digital platform that they may otherwise not have had. And so this really changes the whole world. And this is about opportunity. I wanted to bring you back to show you a really simple example of digital customer experience from a physical to a digital space. So think about a zoo. Think about during a pandemic, a zoo, of course, they all closed all over the world, but yet they still had all their costs, their animals, their vet fees, their rent, but they had no ticket sales, no ability to make money. I want to introduce you to Sweet Farm. Sweet Farm is a small Californian animal sanctuary. And there, what they did is they had the same problem. They had no ticket sales, but they pivoted to a digital conversation and a digital use of customer experience. And they launched a product called Goat to Meeting. This was a hilarious product where basically you could order a live alpaca or a live goat to pop up inside your Zoom meeting in the middle of a business day. And of course, everybody was Zoom exhausted. We were all tired on Zoom and we were bored of Zoom, maybe we were over Zoomed. And yet here was a product that brought the customer connection in a way that was creative and fun and innovative. And they actually made more money out of the $65 10 minutes of live alpacas and goats in the paddocks than they ever would have on ticket sales. Isn't that amazing? You make more money when you go digital than you did physical with your assets. And that's the kind of creativity that we need to see in pivoting our physical assets towards digital conversation. And these were the images that came out of Asia in the beginning of the pandemic. And look how depressing those were. Here's socialization, social isolation in reality. I mean, would you want to go and have a coffee in that Starbucks? There, look at the center image. I don't want to. So we had a problem with customer experience. How do we deliver positive customer experience in a new world? And lots of people struggled with this. Here's a creative execution of mannequins in a Michigan restaurant, and so that's kind of funny, a bit creepy, I'll be honest. So there you get the social isolation with some mannequins. Here, I love this example from Germany with the pool noodle hats. And so, keeping your distance with noodles. And this is my favorite. This is the cafe in France with giant teddy bears achieving the same thing. So obviously in this situation, you have a customer who's going to smile. You have a customer who's going to laugh, tell the story, share in their peer-to-peer online communities the experience they had today. That's the game. That's the conversations we need to curate, of course, as brands. We need to have people talking about our businesses, and that's not going to happen unless we bring the game. Here's another example of a cafe bar in America. Again, they gave everyone tube tables to stand in to get the isolation going. It's funny, it's shareable, it's a story. And you compare that to what other people are doing. This is a school children in France. This is the most depressing image I've ever seen. Kids in little squares. Then you translate that to Disney. This is Disney in Shanghai, doing the same thing, putting children in little squares. And that's so against what the Disney brand values stand for: fun and play and discovery and family and entertainment. Yes, but you must stand in your little square. So it's the complete opposite, if you like, of what the brand should be delivering from a customer experience point of view. So we need to watch in this pandemic that we don't lose the sparkle of the customer experience and the essence of it just to meet regulations or to tick a box. And that really is important. If you look at here what's happening again in a nightclub in the Netherlands, they're open. Yay, we're back. Are we though? Are we? I mean, look at that image. There you are in your socially distanced sitting down nightclub. To me, I haven't been to a nightclub for a while, but trust me, I'm not going to that one. I'd rather poke myself in the eye with a sharp stick. There's no essence to the product there. You don't get to dance, you don't get to meet other people, which is surely the point of going to a nightclub. Compare that to the German drive-in concerts, so we're getting a little bit better here in the entertainment industry. But again, if you look at the image, I guess the first 2-3 rows of cars are probably having a great time. But the 5th, 10th, the 15th row of cars, you may as well be at home. So again, the customer experience not being delivered fully, people not really thinking through the creative execution enough. Now, compare that to this one. I want to show you this video. This is in the Ukraine, and this is what they call a vertical concert. So there's a hotel with lots and lots of empty rooms. There's musicians with no way to play. Here is a win-win situation where they hire out every single hotel room to 6 friends for the whole night. You get to stay in the hotel room for the night. You get to dance and play. You're socially isolated from all the other people, but everyone's a winner here. Full hotel. Everyone gets the festival feeling. The musicians get paid. This is win-win. That's what we're after. The customer experience that puts a smile on people's face and is a creative use in the same type of problem. That's what we're all striving for. Here's a Toronto yoga class done in geometric domes with fairy lights. Here's a sail-in cinema where you can hire the boat, 6 friends, and you have your kind of drive-in movie experience but on the water. So we're seeing lots of creative use of assets all around the world. And the challenge I have for you from a digital conversation point of view is how you can have better conversations and how you can really bring that creativity and the connection to consumers today. Because really that's what this speech is about. This is about flexibility and looking at what you have and looking at better ways to connect and how you can be more agile and how you can keep all of that in the air. Which brings me to the 4 values I want to talk about. I want to talk about the 4 values of what the captive economy consumer feels today. Because if you can connect with those values, then you have a more relevant brand and business and you have a conversation that is more authentic. Otherwise, you're always fighting that battle. The first one, what I want to talk about is freedom and autonomy, and the need for customers and your consumers to feel that they have some kind of control. Now, freedom is a value that we have based entire democracies on. We have a right to our freedoms. We believe firmly that we are free to make big choices every single day. Where I want to work, where I want to live, where I want to travel. Do you remember travel? Who I want to love and marry. Do I want to have children? Will I buy a new car? Big choices, but you're free to make them any given day and time you want. And small choices, we make hundreds of small choices every day. What will I have for lunch? Will I have another beer? We make all those small choices. Now, the pandemic and the situation that we have today took all those choices away from us. I've done a lot of research in the last few months on the captivity, on the psychology of captivity and kidnapping and slavery and all those areas to understand what it's like when people have their freedoms taken away. And the psychology of captivity is quite interesting because actually we're all in a way kind of slaves to this virus at the moment, and so we all have had our freedoms taken away. And if you look at the grief cycle, and many of you may have gone through this cycle if you've lost someone or maybe ended a relationship, you go through the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, peace. And if you've gone through that it's not a nice clean little cycle. You kind of go and you yo-yo back and forward, and that's where we are globally right now. Societies are in the middle of this grief cycle and we're going from denial to anger to bargaining and depressing and back to anger, and on it goes and on it will go. Into that has to come a conversation about fear, because fear and uncertainty breeds very irrational behavior, breeds a very worried consumer, and actually that gives us opportunities to attach, but also a very concerning CX space because people are already anxious. Now, fear is such a strong emotion. Fear is one of the strongest human emotions we have. And in fact, it's so strong you can't even stop some of the physical attributes of fear. So for instance, if you jump out at someone suddenly, 2 things will happen. They'll scream, and that's designed to either scare off the attacker or to attract attention. And the second thing is their hands will fly into their body and protect their head, their chest. And these are physiological, kind of instinctive lizard brain reactions that you can't stop because it's just hardwired into us. Actually, have a look at some of the videos here from the Ellen show doing just this. Watch the scream and the hands.
12,000. So now you're saying so nothing will scare you anymore? Nothing.
So you see that again and again, the hands, the face, the scream, and you can't stop it. And my point about fear is that some fears we understand. So take hurricane season in the States. We understand the shape of hurricane season. We know what to do. We board up our houses, we buy the emergency kits. So with some fears we know the response. But with this pandemic, we didn't have any shape. We didn't know what was happening. We still kind of don't. And so that's why the toilet paper apocalypse happened, by the way. I have a blog on my website if you're interested to learn about the psychology of fear and how we ended up all buying toilet paper. It was just because we needed some form of control. It's hunter-gatherer stuff, you know. We want to understand and we want to be able to do something. And so from a customer experience point of view, what does that mean for you? It means that the customer right now, your consumer, is scared, they're anxious, they're fearful, and into that space you need to give them some feeling of control. And anything is better than nothing. So this is the point about the flexibility speech that I'm giving today. We don't want to walk them through a maze of complicated things. They need control. They're worried as it is. So any form of interaction with your brand needs to be friendly, needs to be clean, needs to be frictionless and seamless and pleasant. And that's the question to you that I need to ask you. How are you going to give them some control? From a digital conversation point of view, you know, there's a lovely expression I like: businesses phone and friends chat. You know, businesses phone you or email you, whereas your friends will message you and chat. And so we need to enter that space. If we're going to be close to the consumers, we need to be able to chat to them. So how are you going to give them some control? It might be just as simple as their ability to reach you, their ability to get their problem solved easily. That's the kind of frictionless, seamless stuff that was maybe important and value adding last year, but now it's hygiene factor stuff. Now it's the basics. Number 2 is attachment, and this is a really great one. It's a huge opportunity for anyone in the CX space. Right now, again, people are at home, they're lonely, they're anxious, they're bored. And into that space and attachment, again, comes that fear. Actually, Stockholm Syndrome is a wonderful way to look at this. So you all are familiar, I'm sure, with Stockholm Syndrome, this idea that you attach yourself in an emotional way to your abuser, simply because they're the only person around you if you're kidnapped. And so right now we're all kind of experiencing this kidnapped feeling, and therefore we're open to attachment. We're open to that Scooby-Doo moment of jumping into whoever's arms is around us. And guess what? If you're a brand and a business and you have your arms ready, the customers will jump into those arms, and you will build brand loyalty and brand attachment beyond what you ever thought possible if you get this right. And so at home, as we're here, we're anxious, we're bored, we're lonely, we're helpless. And into that comes a yearning for attachment. And there were some negative attachments, of course, and there still are during the pandemic. Anyone who's at home who has a little bit of a gambling issue, of course, you're sitting on the sofa, your phone's out, you're gambling away. You know, that's really, really dangerous. People had huge retail issues in terms of the Amazon boxes couldn't stop coming. You know, people spent a lot of money on retail, so it wasn't all great. But there was also some wonderful, interesting social attachment. So we all had a huge attachment to the platform Zoom, and so we all socialized on Zoom, and then messaging exploded and people were digitally attached to each other. And so there's a wonderful kind of yearning for social attachment digitally, into which, of course, comes the opportunity for brands and businesses to step. So if in humankind and friends were doing all this, the brands and businesses that weren't involved here in the conversation were, of course, missing out. And this brings us to this conversational commerce and the conversational economy and the importance of being part of that right now. Now, it was always important, as I would have said on the stage last year at Conversation 2019. But here we are in Conversation 2020, and the importance of the conversational economy and being part of this conversation as a brand and business has just ratcheted up tenfold, because now this is the environment that people are living in. This is the environment that people experience things in. Now, it's always been about relationships. Of course it is. Any brand and business will succeed if they develop good relationships with their consumer. And I think as the dust settles on the whole pandemic, I think we're getting into that space where we realize that connection, it's all about human connection. And human connection doesn't need to be physical, by the way. It can be digital, but the connection part is what's important. We need to connect, and we need to connect emotively. And so I built this engagement ladder about emotions to teach brands and businesses how important it is to climb higher up the ladder, and preferably to the top. Because at the end there is indifference, right? And indifference is when you don't care about someone at all. Indifference is when you don't really care that your customer is suffering in any shape. Now imagine if you were in a personal relationship and your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend was indifferent to you. You know, you would leave that relationship because it's not a good space. The same is true with brands and customers. So you try and get up the ladder to pity, and pity is when you acknowledge someone's suffering. So that's you walking down the street, you see a homeless person, you think, oh dear, and you walk on. And that's just pity. You pity the person that doesn't have any home to sleep in tonight, but you don't do anything about it, you don't really feed anything. And again, as a brand of business, you don't really want to be in the pity space. And a lot of customer experience interaction with consumers, they do feel just pitied. The brand doesn't really do anything for them, and it's not a great space to be in. Sympathy is the middle ground, and sympathy is where you at least care about your customer and their suffering. But really, what is care without feeling? So empathy is the next level, where you feel their suffering with them, and maybe you actually can understand it because you've been through it, or you can certainly you want them to feel that you really, really get it. And this is where a good conversational commerce kicks in, where you can really empathize with someone and be on their side and listen to them, and they feel heard, and that's the really most important thing. Even any angry customer experience can be dissolved if the customer feels heard. But the last one there, compassionate commerce, is where we need to get to. Compassion is when you relieve someone's suffering. That's actually a verb, compassion. It's like that there's an expression you often see on cards or t-shirts, love is a verb. This idea that love is a great concept, but you have to do something, you have to show your love. And that's the same in personal relationships as it is in a business relationship. Let's show our customers that we're compassionate. Let's actually do something action-based that shows them that you care. And that's really important if we're going to have a positive customer experience. Actually, let me show you a quick video from South Africa. It's about 2 or 3 years old. It's a Christmas video. I know it's a bit close to Christmas, or early to be playing Christmas videos, but I want you to watch as the customers get something that they don't expect. So what's going to happen here is that the Pick and Pay manager is going to pay for all the shoppers' shopping as a treat, because it was a hard economic year. But I want you to see, this is a compassionate moment, and I want you to see through the whites of the eyes how customers react when a brand or business connects with them in a compassionate way. Have a look at this.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Well, thanks, just tired.
Tired. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? I'm well, thank you. Have you done all your Christmas shopping already?
So you'll probably see me next week.
I'm from Pick and Pay, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for being shoppers at Pick and Pay.
Because you're a loyal shopper, I know that for a fact firsthand.
You are receiving your entire shop for free.
Are you serious?
Yes, I am. Really?
Really?
Yes.
Okay. We are paying for this whole shop. This whole shop.
Everything today is free of charge.
I should have shopped more.
You can say that.
It is so free.
Yeah. With compliments, your entire shop is for free. Oh.
So I'm going to give it to the lady for free. That's it. Okay, well.
So ask yourself the question, like, when was the last time one of your customers cried in a good way, not in a bad way, and picked you up and hugged you and laughed and applauded? And that's what the game is, because that's at the point where compassion has kicked in and they really feel an attachment to a brand. And that's what we need to do on all platforms, whether it's physical or whether it's digital. We need to make consumers feel. We need to make them climb that ladder up to the top of compassion. So ask yourself the question, how are you going to give and form these emotive attachments? The consumer's open to these attachments. How in the conversational economy are we going to make sure that these attachments happen and that they feel connected, to us? If we get that right now, we build loyalty beyond what we ever thought possible. The third value I want to talk about is the community, and it's a really, really obvious one that we're all in this together. You hear it all the time, but community has become a core value for consumers. Now, as humans, by the way, we seek love and belonging always. It's intrinsic in us. You remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That third level there, once you've got past the safety and the security and food and water, love and belonging is a core need of all humans. We're a tribal people. And today, of course, in modern society, we replicate that tribal need, and we have our family tribes, we have our work tribe, we have our social tribes, we have gym and sports tribes, and of course digital tribes, online communities is one of the biggest tribes that we belong to. And in the social isolation part, of course, the social part of love and belonging closed down. So you saw the Italians singing on their balconies and the NHS workers applauding, and so people wanted to connect, they wanted to be humans still. And we saw people, here's someone giving out free cactuses as people were out for a walk. This little guy in America, he's only 9 years old, and he put out a tweet saying, please email my mom if you want me to come and play happy birthday on my violin on your lawn for your birthday. I know how bad it was to have a pandemic birthday, and I want to cheer you up. It's so cute. This guy in Italy who owned a small fruit and veg shop, and he said, look, I'm Albanian, I came 10 years ago to Italy, and you welcomed me here, and now let me return that that good wishes and please take some fruit and veg for free. So this idea that, you know, we're here for each other. And one of my favorite examples is maths teacher in the United States who was doing online learning, and then the girl just wasn't understanding it, and he got in his pickup, drove around to her house and was trying to teach her geometry through the window. So this idea that, you know, we saw individuals really become part of community. Then of course commercial people did too. So Brewdog, a microbrewery in Scotland, said, you know, once this is over, we're buying everyone in the world a beer. Just download the Facebook voucher and have a beer on us. You know, huge global sampling opportunity. A pub in Glasgow delivered free beer to their locals in their houses during the pandemic when the bar was closed. That's compassionate commerce. Even adult entertainment brands got in on the act. IKEA released their meatball recipe. If you couldn't come to IKEA, we'll come to you. You can make the meatballs at home. Well, let's face it, you make most of what IKEA sell at home anyway. So this idea that, you know, we can be part of this community. So the question I think you need to ask yourself is, how are we going to contribute to the community connection? So how do we, you know, using online communities, make people feel that they belong? How do we leverage the peer-to-peer conversations and the peer-to-peer economy? Because that's where the power is. And you really need to, as a brand, tap into that. You need to be curating conversations within the peer-to-peer online communities for your brand to get resonance and noise. If you're not doing that, then you're kind of not part of the community. And because community is such a heavy value today for consumers, you have to be part of their digital community conversations. Which leads us on, of course, to that fourth value, that digital step jump that we've all experienced. You know, it's been like a huge 9-month training course for the world in terms of digital. So we were already living, of course, a digital first world. Everything that we did in our lives is touched by digital. But now we have these interesting norms where my 77-year-old mother online shopped for the first time. She would never have considered, you know, online shopping before until she had to. And now that the pandemic is over, interestingly, she does one online shop a month for all the big items. So there's behavioral changes that we're seeing of people folding into digital, that were digital immigrants. A staff member of mine, her mother, was taught how to use Zoom on a Monday, and by Wednesday was teaching all her friends how to crochet via Zoom. Like, she had become a digital tutor in 3 days. So this idea of you know, an older generation who will be digital immigrants taking up the digital torch. We now live in different ways. You know, our food all comes to us maybe, so the whole big massive upswing in Uber Eats and Deliveroo. We travel now digitally. Lots of people this year didn't get to physically travel, so they digitally traveled via VR or YouTube. We all work from home, so we're now doing what we used to do in office blocks and glass cages, all in our own homes. I'm just looking at that image. That cat looks very, very pissed off that its owner is still at home. I thought my human went to work every day. And so this idea that, you know, everything that we do is now being digitized. And the most important one for me as an anthropologist and an interest in social sciences is the socialization one. People were able to digitally socialize via Zoom, and they had wine nights and poker nights and dinner parties, and people folded into digital and leaned into digital in a way that we could never have dreamt of before. And that's really important for digital conversation commerce, because you need to understand now that people talk to each other digitally, probably maybe more than the real world right now, and certainly this year. So unless you're part of those conversations digitally, and unless your brand is really part of the conversational economy, you're not saying anything. And when a brand says nothing, it disappears. It's scary. So digital transformation, you know, we were already on this massive arc anyway for the last 10 years, but we've just taken a straight line up and we've become nearly a digital first world. I talked about phygital as a value last year when I was with you in Conversation 2020 from the stage, this idea that the physical and the digital have just collided into one entity. And that is so true now, isn't it? So we have examples where maybe the store associates in a physical store were there on a week one selling, and now they're at home, but they're still selling. So they're now digitally connecting to the consumer where they would have been physically connecting before. And that's the pivot, that's the agility, the flexibility that I'm talking about today that we need to be able to do. We need to have a business that can pivot across physical and digital at any given time. So you're going to ask yourself, how are you going to best deliver on digital, not only to survive this, but to thrive in the business? And it is something you have to really consider. You're having digital conversations, deep, curated with consumers to stay relevant. So what are the 5 big takeaways from that piece? The first one, I think, is to make sure you promote freedom and give customers some kind of control. They need to feel that they're in control with your brand, with your business. So look at the customer journey, look at all the customer experience touch points, and make sure that we have them in control, that they feel that they're in control. It's really, really important given the current fear environment. Secondly, you need to be proactive and get conversational in the economy today. So you need to be having conversations with your customers. You don't wait till they come to you, you go to them. You make sure that you're having a debate and discussion with them. You're curating that conversation creatively, innovatively, hopefully. Number 3 is connect with authenticity, heart, and remember that compassionate commerce piece. Building your online communities, leveraging the peer-to-peer economy, but do so authentically. Lead with vulnerability. Be compassionate. Show your compassion by doing something action-based. Number 4, make sure that you've got that phygital business I've just spoken about, making sure that you're digitizing the physical assets, and the physical assets are leveraging the digital, and it's all going around in one big circle. And make sure that you have a digital first business, because the world is a digital first world. And staying flexible, which is the whole point of the day today, flexible and agile. Make sure we're going to be riding this roller coaster for 2 years, so we need to make sure that we can always change and always pivot the business as we go through this journey over the next 18 months. Now, I've put a summary together about that captive economy, about the values that I've spoken about for the captive economy, and I'm going to give it to the conversation team after the speech today, and they'll be able to push it out to you, or you'll be able to download it, so at least you can get it there in a PDF, because I know this conversation today and the presentation I've just given was very visual, so at least you'll have some words to read at some point. If you enjoyed, by the way, that speech, my blog is there, kenhughes.info/blog. There's lots of stuff there on the psychology of consumerism, and on the psychology of the pandemic, and also lots of stuff on customer experience. So if you're interested, do go on and subscribe. You'll also, of course, get the newsletter with that once a month if you do subscribe. Lots of little videos and business cases and examples and inspiration from all over the world. And if you're too lazy to read, you can always jump on the YouTube channel and have a watch of all the blog stuff there that I do once a month also. So that's the conversation. I'm going to continue the conversation now, of course, with questions. But if you don't get a chance to watch this live, if you're watching this on demand, perhaps afterwards, and you do have a question, you can always hit me up on my social media tags there. Ken Hughes IE is the tag. And you'll find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. You'll find me everywhere. But for now, let's go back to the studio and let's have that conversation and take some questions.
Thank you, Ken, for this presentation, for giving us all your insights.
You're welcome. You enjoy it?
That was great. Absolutely. I learned a lot. I laughed a lot at the pictures, especially the parenting pictures. I could relate, as you can imagine.
Relate? Good, yes. We've all tried to tape our children to the floor at some point.
Or wished we did at the very least. All right. Well, thank you. Right now we're going to start our Q&A, so I want to remind our audience, I think the audience is here actually. I want to remind our audience that we're taking in your questions, so please ask your questions, whether you're on LinkedIn or on the Conversation website, please ask those questions. Now is your time. You will only get this one chance. In the meantime, Ken, I wanted to ask you a question. So one of the things that you mentioned is that ensuring that consumers have a seamless experience on your website, that there are no kinks on the website. That's a matter of hygiene, right? That it's essential, every company must do that on their e-commerce website. I get the impression from my personal experience, but also from conversations with our clients, that really that's good, that's important, improving the FAQ, making sure that there's all the information that a customer could possibly look for about a product on the website. However, that's not enough. Sometimes we just don't want to sift through the information on the website. We just want somebody to tell us, here's the answer you're looking for. Now you can move on with your life. Is that the impression you're getting also?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that's what I mean when I say frictionless, I mean, so just because you have a website with loads of information all buried somewhere, that doesn't make it frictionless. That makes it difficult. That's orienteering. That's having to go off and find what you're looking for buried somewhere. What you want is, when I say seamless frictionless, what I mean is acknowledging that the world that we live in is one click, one swipe. And right. So no matter who you are, and what's interesting about the pandemic, and it talks about that in the digital step jump value there, like a digital immigrant who isn't necessarily a native to digital activity will now expect the same kind of seamless frictionless immediacy than someone. So if you talk about generations, if you look at a Gen Z person age, maybe early 20s, you think, okay, fair enough, I understand this, the me generation, they want it now, they want it instantly, but so does a 40, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old today, because we are now wired, and the pandemic has certainly brought that to life now, that we want it all immediately, we want it all brought to us, we want it easy, and so just because you have information somewhere doesn't make it easy. What makes it easy is I get what I need instantly, whether that's chatbot, AI fueled, human fueled, doesn't really matter. This is where soul meets silicon. I talked about this last year, where the technology has to do what it does, the human has to do what it does, and together, those two things can deliver that frictionless, seamless experience. So I think you need to look at your whole customer journey, whether it's physical, digital, or a collision, or both, and try to identify any of those pain points. And if a pain point is, yes, the information is there in the FAQ, they just haven't found it, That's not their problem. That's very much your problem, you know. And so yeah, we expect seamless. I mean, if you look at the increase this year, for instance, in swipe up shopping, in commerce, social media commerce, so you know, a lot of that is the reason those impulse sales work. And I don't know if you bought anything, Sarah, recently through swiping up on Insta or Facebook or whatever. I certainly have. By the time it arrives, usually from China somewhere, I've realized I didn't actually need it pure impulse based. But the reason that works is because it's so frictionless. It's just, oh, this is like I swipe up and I hit the PayPal button. Literally, there's 2 swipes involved. A swipe up to say into the site, I click to say I'm going to buy it, and I'm done. And it's so frictionless that it basically brings the impulse purchase to a place. You know, the thought process of I might like this to buying it is so small, so tight, and so frictionless that it works. If you introduce any kind of friction in there, I'm gone. Because I'm thinking, actually, do I really need this? A lot of social shopping is actually done, swipe up shopping is done after midnight. And so it's that kind of bored, oh, what am I doing? You're scrolling through your feed and saying, yeah, I have that. If you make it difficult for a consumer, they won't have it. It's that simple.
Right. That makes sense. And so when you're looking at an e-commerce website, a typical e-commerce website, somebody asking you a question, do you need help? Can I answer this question for you? That's kind of the equivalent, or as close as we can get on a typical e-commerce website.
Definitely. I mean, conversation, and that's obviously what we're talking about today. But I mean, for me, businesses generally call you or email you, whereas friends chat. You know, and psychologically, we're used to those little dancing dots, that chat. That's more personal, and that's more. So if someone pops up to chat to you, you kind of don't view it as a business conversation now. You do tend to view it more as a kind of a friend-to-friend conversation, and that's the you're in that kind of, hey, how can I help you? And obviously, you know, it may be AI fueled with a chatbot, but as long as you got the tone right, I don't mind whether I'm talking to a bot or not, as long as I get the information that I need.
Sure.
And if it's human fueled, and obviously in AI, the scarcer human contact becomes, the more valued it is. That's the same with anything economic. The scarcer it is, the more valued it is. And obviously in the pandemic, we are at a place where we're kind of human contact is scarce in our lives, in fact. So any human interaction that you can have, and that brings a bit of warmth to your day. And remember, for some people, depressing as this is, chatting on an e-commerce site might be the only human contact they have today. And so we have a huge CX pot of gold here, where you can now, I mean, last year, if you were delivering a positive CX experience, that would be great. This year, if you're doing the same experience, it means a lot more to me, because this might be the one moment in my day that goes right. This is the one easy moment in my day, whereas everything else is a bit uncertain, a bit anxious and bored and lonely, all those things I talked about in the speech.
Sure.
So for experience, we actually have the power to form, as I talked about, emotive attachments in a way deeper level than we ever would have had before.
Right. So it's very emotional. Another question that we received on a completely different topic now, no transition. Actually, so when it comes to budget, all companies are facing huge constraints. So do you think that it's possible to be creative within CX with a constrained budget? How does that work?
Yeah, you should spend all your money on me.
Perfect, it's done.
I think actually, do you know what, that pressure, the pressure for how do you get your people to be creative? I actually think that having zero budget is the best way to be creative. Unfortunately, I think when you have large budgets, people tend to repeat what they always did, spend the money in the same agencies, play it safe because they have money. I often think, and I've seen this play out in the last recession also, when people's backs are against the wall, that's when you see the creativity burst through. Right. And you've seen on the pandemic, you've seen various local businesses, I'm sure wherever you live, pivot. You've seen new businesses pivot. That Sweet Farm example I gave you in that zoo is a great example. When the back's against the wall and the business is about to crumble, guess what? People bring it, and they bring the kind of redirection in terms of where they should go, new business models, often things they should have been doing years ago anyway. We have a lot of local online businesses stepping into e-commerce for the first time in the last 8 months. They know they should have been there 3 or 4 years ago, but you know what? A bit lazy, times were good. Suddenly, when forced, here they are. So to answer your question in terms of CX, now is the time where we really need to bring it. We need to think, okay, what can we do? How can we interact with our consumer in a relevant way that makes them smile? If you go back to that Pick and Pay video I showed you there, that's the reaction we need, okay? We want people to cry and laugh and hug us and to feel. They need to feel something. Now it's up to, there's no AI algorithm that will give you the answer to that. That will only come from you sitting around your table or on your Zooms and actually sitting there and thinking, okay, what can we do here to reach into people's lives and make a difference? How can we be compassionate? How can we do it and make them laugh? How can we, and that's what CX is, giving someone an experience. People often think, oh, customer experience. They focus on the customer part. They don't necessarily focus on the experience part. You're supposed to be giving people an experience. And if you give someone an experience, they should share it and talk about it and story tell about it and laugh and cry and feel. So your job is to actually think about, okay, with the assets we currently have, how can we do that? And with a constrained budget, things can cost nothing. I mean, I remember the Dollar Shave Club, now $1 billion company, sold to Unilever many years ago. If you look at the very first viral he shot to launch his business, it was a cheap, low budget, $100 viral, but it was quirky, it was funny, it was extremely creative and big, worldwide. So money and creativity it's not a jigsaw that click together. I think often the less budget you have, and you see that with startups all over the world. Startups come to market and they make a lot of noise because they find new ways to access the market in a conversational way, in a relevant way, that kind of established businesses get lazy and just spend money and think that'll happen. It doesn't.
Sure. So somehow a budget constraint can even be a blessing in that it forces you to be creative.
I still think you should give me half your money, but yeah.
All right, perfect. I'll keep that in mind for next year's budget. Another question that we received is actually, that's really interesting. This is a nice transition. We talked about belonging and creating emotional connection with people. And so you've talked a little bit, I believe, earlier about peer-to-peer communities. Can you think of successful peer-to-peer online communities that you've noticed maybe in the last few months, or?
Yeah, I mean, online tribal belonging, as I said in the presentation, is so important to humans. And when you take the physical away from that, you're only left with digital tribal belonging. So everyone now had to form digital tribes to survive this pandemic and to feel that they belonged and to reach out with their friends. And there is a certain amount of digital fatigue, of course. And I work in the live events industry. So I up to recently, I would have been touring the world performing live on stage, and I'm supported in that by all the technicians and the lighting people and the set people and the theater people, and there's a huge industry. And if you open the live events industry fully, you're into concerts and into circus and all sorts of things. And all those people, of course, currently are unemployed and are struggling. And that is an online community that I'm part of as a speaker. But actually, interestingly, that community is very vibrant, and they have come together for the first time, because usually they're all freelancers, they're all creative people, and they all kind of work in little pockets. But now that their times are hard, that community has really come together digitally and has conversations every day, very supportive spaces, lots of ideas, lots of people working together in new ways, lots of collaboration, which is the main thing that online community is about. How do we collaborate together? You've got competitors coming together to collaborate on new initiatives, and looking at that is really interesting. And I think out the other side of this live events industry, while it's on its knees struggling right now, will be a stronger community-driven place because of that. And that would never have happened without the online connection and conversations that are happening. It would have been very silo-based physically, whereas online allows us to all come together and talk and support. And we're seeing that across all peer-to-peer communities, no matter where you are, no matter what industry you are, from a consumer point of view to B2B. And so, it is a great time in a way, again, backs to the wall. People feel that they need answers and feel they want to belong, and they reach to digital online communities to do that.
Sure, so somehow through a need of support from one another, they've come together naturally and kind of organized, and then that's created new opportunities. The difficult situation has created new opportunities to work together and create, probably.
Yeah, and to take that then to its fruition in terms of the ramifications for someone listening, if you own a brand or business, now is the time where you need to be reaching into those online communities and having a conversation with the people, or building your own, or curating your own, but you need to be part of the conversation, because if you're not part of that conversation within these online communities, then you're kind of invisible, you're nothing, you're nobody.
Right.
So you need to be there, because that's where people are today. If you look at the amount of online time we have today, digitally, obviously it's significantly more than it was last year. We now live most of our lives digitally, via work and social and pleasure, and so therefore we need to be in that space. You need to be there, not just buying space, but in there conversationally, because if you're in the conversation, you're part of my peer network. If you're in there just buying ad space and shouting at me, then you know what, you're another irrelevant brand. Sure. I'll just wallpaper out very quickly. So it's all about, conversation has always been about being relevant and having something relevant to say, and also listening. That's the art of conversation. You should be listening. So brands often make that mistake and they just keep shouting and keep talking, as opposed to listening. Engaging. To what they're saying, making them feel heard. That's how you make someone feel in the end.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, now we've received a request for, let me see, I thought it was a tip. But yes, actually it's a tip. They're asking us for a tip. So it's hard to communicate authentically from the heart, obviously, as you said. Do you have any thoughts on how that can be done on a large scale online, communicating from the heart and authentically?
Okay, I disagree with the first thing. That's difficult.
Oh, okay.
Communicate from the heart. It's the most natural thing in the world. I think what happens along the way is we have layers and layers and layers of process and and box ticking, and we end up putting stuff out that's very corporate and very bland. Again, I go back to startups, they tend to be very driven by their founders. Their founders talk from the heart, they lead with vulnerability, they lead with genuine nature, and that's how the culture is built. Then all those people in the organization do the same. And so the reality in a CX place today, for instance, is that you may have someone a frontline customer service position working from their own dormitory in their own home, talking to someone who also is locked in their bedroom in their own home. And so there is an amount of empathy there that we can leverage today. It is about embedding culture in your organization that allows people to be human and allows people to go off script and listen and to be heard. I don't think it's something tremendously complicated. I think there have been hugely successful global virals. And if you ever want to look at even Christmas adverts, Christmas adverts, those ones that make your heart twang and make you cry, that's a good example of large scale heartwarming authenticity. So someone creates, and let's say it's an agency creates a mood piece that makes you feel as you watch it, whether it's on YouTube or TV, doesn't matter. And that's large scale. So what you want to do is you want to capture that ability for someone from a CX point of view to do that. Again, it loops back to our earlier point about creativity. I don't have an answer for you because it's such a wide, how long is a piece of string question. Depends on your industry, depends on the customer, depends on what you're trying to achieve, depends on where they are in the customer journey, what the pain point is, all that kind of stuff. But the short answer is, you have to make them feel something, make them feel that they belong, make them feel that they matter, make them feel that they're not just a transaction. How do you do that at scale? Great question. But we've got so many data and algorithms that unless you're collecting all the data and running the algorithms and being able then, and I always say I'm really annoyed at people talking about data as the new oil. Data is not the new oil because oil is useless to you. A barrel of oil, you can do nothing with a barrel of oil. But if you refine the oil and change it into something else, you can do amazing things with it, with gasoline and all sorts of stuff. So data is just oil. You need to refine that with systems and creativity to be able to use it. And once you can do that, then you have extremely powerful, hopefully single person-to-person data that you can then action and make them feel like they are unique in your world. Now, You might be doing thousands of times in an automated system every second, but as long as they feel that they're special, that's the game.
So make use of the data in intelligent ways, make the data speak. But then you mentioned at the very beginning also, which I thought was really interesting, don't be too uptight to control the conversation that's being had between an advisor and a customer. That's obviously, it makes so much sense.
I do a lot of work with customer care operators all over the world and organizations, and one of the worst things that kills creativity is the script. Now we have to use the script, I understand.
Sure.
We can't let everybody off script, and the amount of people, the talent that we recruit may only be there for 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, so we need to have script, but we need to be recruiting talent that understands that when there's a moment in the script that they can go off script, like skiing a little bit. I don't know you ski, but when you go off piste that little bit, that those couple of seconds off piste can be great fun, and the soundscape changes and you feel a bit freer, and then you come back onto the piste and you're fine. So I want people to, when they hit a bump along that journey, treat the person as a human, actually listen, as opposed to say, no, sorry, we can't do that. The system doesn't allow me to do that. Instantly, then as a customer, I go all the way down from that engagement, passion, ratcheted right down to indifference. The moment you can't actually hear what I'm trying to say. And so we need to be able to teach people from a CX point of view to go around with those little bumps and to empower them to know that they won't be slapped in the hand for doing it.
Right.
They will be promoted for doing it. That they will be promoted to be treating people like humans and engaging with people and making people laugh and smile. And if we can clone that type of behavior in CX, that's what we need to do.
Empowering them as human, that's beautiful. It's beautifully said. Thank you. It seems that our viewers are paying attention because they ask a question that's bouncing right back off of what you said. We've been given so much data and statistics since the beginning of COVID-19. What CX statistic or piece of information has struck you the most in the last few months?
Okay, in terms of customer experience, I suppose to go back to the social shopping, I heard a stat recently that I really was surprised at, that 1 in 4 of every online shop in the UK was triggered by social swipe-up shopping. Now that was huge to me. That's, wow. 25% of everything we delivered through people's homes was being swiped up as opposed to actively searched. And that's a good example of our lives that we're now leading in terms of digital. So to the e-commerce world, you can wait till someone sits down to do a search for a product, or you can actively again collect the data and understand that at the right time, at the right place, I know when to talk to Sarah. I know it's at this particular time, and I know that this is the interest. Clothing and textiles is the biggest one for cycle shopping. That's what she's into. She's into boutique handbags. So at 11 o'clock, I'm going to make sure that in her Insta feed, I'm going to pop up this boutique handbag.
Okay.
So we have so much information on our shoppers. It's a marketeer's dream, really. If in the 1950s you told a marketeer that you were going to at some point be able to have a one-to-one conversation with someone, literally reach into the living room at a particular time of the day where they're more active and more anxious to buy, and be able to trigger that by a really good quality video, personalized message, they wouldn't know what to do. They think you were making, and that's the world we live in today. So I think that for me was amazing, that ability to really collect the data, understand the person, reach in and trigger the sale. And I think as we lean into local online and local online becoming even bigger than global online, I think we're going to see a huge amount of small business, SME business coming into the e-commerce platforms now we have in the last 6 or 8 months. Christmas was also going to trigger that now again. And I'm hoping that local will outplay global eventually in e-commerce. So instead of the big giants owning most of the pie, actually it'll be the small retailers, small operators who have the e-commerce ability now. We're already better at conversation because they already know their customers locally. And as they grow their cake a little bit, I think there's a lot of white space there still to be filled in online e-commerce. And I think if they get that right, then we're going to see huge growth. And in fact, I had a conversation yesterday with someone who was talking about, Amazon's going to own Christmas. Everyone's scared of going. And the actual counter argument was, well, actually, if I go on and buy something on Amazon, it might arrive in 2 days. Whereas if I order from my local stop now, I can click and collect in 2 hours.
Right.
So, that maybe local will actually end up owning a bit more of this Christmas. And maybe we lean into that. We realize that local online, as opposed to local physical, will play a bigger part in our own communities, which would be great, which leverages back to that community value I spoke about.
Just another one of those trends that's exploded in the last few months, and we'll see the Christmas season will be a test of that.
I think Christmas is going to happen 4 weeks early. We're going to have Christmas in November. That's just the reality. I think everyone is in second wave lockdowns. Everyone's worried that the stores may not open in December as they think they will. And if they are open, they'll be too cluttered. So we're already seeing people reaching into their pockets now online, not even waiting for Black Friday or Cyber Monday and doing it now. So I think we're going to shift Christmas all the way back. And so people are also, there's an interesting trend to kind of an anti-capitalist, anti-commercial trend this Christmas. You know what, I'm going to do a handmade Christmas, I'm going to do an easier Christmas. And that's a whole kind of post-pandemic view of the world. Anyway, that's a bit philosophical. That's a bit, maybe we don't need all this stuff. Maybe we don't need to run this hamster wheel. Maybe I don't need to work as much and commute as much. And so there is a little bit of a kickback. Consumers are talking about that a lot, but I think actually in reality, they want to spend as much. So they're going to have an intention. As we often see, consumers' intentions then will dissolve when it comes to the panic of Christmas, and they just spend anyway.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you for all these insights, for all these thoughts, for answering our viewers' questions. This is it. This is our time. So thank you once again.
You're very welcome. I'll see you for Conversation 2021.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So we're on the same page. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. And to our audience, in just 1 minute, we're going to have my colleague Gabriel and Adrian from Texel join us for the conversation about how brands and retailers can work together online for e-commerce. So we'll see you in just a moment. Have a good one.
Hello, and welcome to How to Improve Brand Customer Experience within the Retail Framework. Thank you for being with us today, and I'm very happy to welcome Adrien from Texel today for this session. Adrien, maybe you'd like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yes, hello, Gabriel, and happy to be here to talk about this new offer and our partnership. So I'm Adrian. I lead all the marketing and development activity in Texel. Quick summary of Texel. Texel is an agency specialized in field force outsourcing. We are part of a global group. The name is Globe Group. The main target of the group is to provide an omni-channel strategy to catch all the customer journey and shopper journey. Texel is based on 4 main pillars and actions that we can set up on the field. Field force, sales force team, we have merchandising action, trade marketing, and of course training, because we will talk about it after, but we have one campus dedicated for people inside the agency, but outside too, because we are able to train some people about retailers, for example, which are our partners.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us today. So today the topic of conversation is to look at, how brands and retailers have faced a crisis. We've talked about it in the previous sessions in the previous weeks, and we've all read things in the press, but I would like to take a moment to differentiate the challenges that brands are facing and that retailers are facing. They're not necessarily facing the exact same thing. So for the past few months, we've had a lot of discussions with our customers, some brands, some retailers. What we've seen is that some challenges from the retailers have been increased by the crisis. So obviously the problem when everybody was in confinement, how do I use my salespeople? How do I maximize my sales while, having half of my resources at home? How do I make sure that, I can adapt very fast to the new context, with peak of traffic? I don't necessarily have the time in a matter of few weeks to change my website, to change my e-commerce strategy. So how do I adapt quite fast with the resources I have at hand? When you look at the brands, it's about the same thing for their own website when we talk about, direct to customer, D2C. But they also have to face the problem that they depend on the retailers. The retailers are their distributors. So, for each distributor, it might be a different challenge. How do I ensure that my brand is represented in the right way at that retailer? Before, maybe I had a little bit more resources. I could count on people in store. Now I have to focus most of my efforts online. How do I ensure that my relationship with the retailer still remains good? And how do I make sure that the brand experience that I provide for my customer is the best, regardless of which distributor I'm talking to? We've seen, again, different KPIs, different results and different analysis on the market, and we see that now everybody talks about omni-channel. We've been talking about it for years now, but it's become not necessarily a reality, but a brutal concept for people who are not doing it. I think it was from Google and a full 6 study that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's about 73% of customers that expect an omni-channel customer experience from their brands. So this is kind of the insights that we got from our customers, from our clients directly, that confirmed what we had read, from the market. Do you see the same thing happening at Texel? Because we come from the digital space, you come maybe more from the physical space. So I don't know do you see the same thing?
Yeah. We totally share this vision, and what we could see now with our customer is the fact that we need to combine this experience, physical and digital. Customer want always to go in store, to have a physical experience. They want to buy because they have proximity with the sellers, with demonstrators. They can have good advice, other services provided in the store. So they keep this habit to stay at the physical point. But we need to mix and create something different in terms of digital. This is why we want to humanize this part of the web. The idea is to provide really first of all, advice, be able to have a better knowledge about the product. I think we will see it after, but customers are more and more happy to have people from the brand to go deeply in questions, sorry. Yes, we fully have this vision, and we need now to humanize the web, as I said before, but and provide good services. And whatever the channel you have, you need to have the same level of quality and the same brand experience for the customer.
Okay, so we're quite aligned on this.
Yeah.
So to dive directly into the actual thing that now we're doing. So the crisis started around February, beginning of March. Again, we started this conversation with Texel around the same time, and we had discussions with brands and retailers for 3 to 4 months. And at the beginning of summer, around mid-June, we started a new experimentation that is now taking, good proportion, which is what we call sales activation. Sales activation is actually very simple. It's how do you give back brands their voice on the retailer's channels. So basically, how, as a visitor, can I connect to the brand or to the brand that's selling me this product through the distributor? If you think about the physical world, for many years we've experienced this. We're all used to that. When you're a tourist and you come to Paris and you go to Galeries Lafayette, you have luxury corners, you have corners dedicated to makeup, to fashion, to whatever, you name it. Same thing when you talk about electronics, same thing when you talk about sports. All stores all over the world have these dedicated brand corners, and we've all experienced that. Why not online? Why is it so difficult to have the same experience online where I go into a multi-brand distributor, multi-brand retailer, and I know exactly what I want. I know that I want this specific product from this specific brand, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe from 3 to 4 different brands, and I want this expertise from the brand. Again, even if you're the best retailer in the world, chances are you're not as good as the brand to describe your product. A retailer has hundreds, thousands of brands, so it's not their job to make sure that they're all represented to the same level. That's the responsibility for the brand. So again, to come back to this very simple concept, the idea is that at iAdvise, we were already providing conversations on retail's website. The idea was now to just bring the respondents from the brand. So you're a visitor, you come on the website, and when you're on a product page or when you're looking at a certain specific part of the website, the person who's going to answer your questions, the person who's going to have a conversation with you is the brand. Simple as that. Now, of course, that brings a lot of different questions because it's a new concept and it's not like in a physical store where you can just go to the corner and then leave. You have to think about, how do I bring so many brands on my website? How do I make sure that, the customer journey is frictionless, that it's not what we call a Christmas tree where everything blinks everywhere. So that whole thing is a constant work in progress with our clients, with our retailers, and with our brands, where we have to sit down regularly with them to make sure that every time we bring a new brand and every time we add things to the system, it still makes for a beautiful experience on the website. But less about iAdvise, where we talk more about the platform side of things. The very important part of this is the respondents, the brand respondents. So how do I make sure as a retailer and as a brand that the people who are going to answer those questions, those customer questions, are the best ambassadors? And that's basically what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a good challenge because we have the habit to set up brand ambassador community in store or out store. But even if we have some similarity between this profile and the digital one, we need to think differently about the profile and how to make sure that we will really catch what brands want in terms of digital spaces and assets that we need to set up on the platform. So we decided to really set up a specific offer and specific process. This is not the same profile. We need to catch all the good soft skills about these people. So we organize this part on 4 pillars with a really dedicated offer for all the consumer. First pillar will be, of course, the recruitment, hard skills, experience, as usual. But we can see that in this kind of experience, you need to have a lot of soft skills to really understand the way you need to talk with the consumer through digital. So we set up a strong recruitment process and our talent acquisition process, switch in more live testing in order to be sure that everybody will match with the digital parts. Second pillar, for me, one of the most important will be training. We talked about campus previously, but we set up a training process of several days. The idea is not only to be sure that these people will understand the digital tool, but more how to use this tool to catch and advise really good the consumer directly. So we set up this 2 or 3 days of training to be sure that these people will be matching all the brand's requirements. The third pillar will be the place, because you talked previously, perhaps people will be in store, but if the store is closed or if these people are not already in store, what is the best solution? So we decided to create some dedicated spaces where the brand can go and customize all this kind of shop-in-shop to be sure that the demonstrators, the ambassadors, will be able to demonstrate all the range directly because we have chat, but we have live demo through video. So we want to have directly the consumer involved in the brand space through this live part. And last pillar will be the coaching. This is a new offer. This is a new profile, and we need to coach this kind of profile daily through the tool, I advise, but physically too. The idea about coaching is to increase competencies of profile, but of course monitoring all the performance and be sure that we will match the results that we target with the brand at the beginning. So we set up this new offer with several, you said, customers together. Do you have some insight about the first program that we set up?
Yes, so just to come back to one thing you said, so just to make sure that I understood properly, is you come from the physical part of commerce, and again, linked to I advise, the idea is to break down silos. So we were focusing more on breaking down silos between the retailer and the brand. You are more focused on breaking down silos between the physical and the digital world, making sure that in the future, people, like respondents in store, can access online customer and vice versa.
Exactly.
So you talk about video a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. The idea, so you talk about this, but people could be in store or could be in another place, if you want to answer on this one. So if you are in store, we just need to target together about what is the best way and what are the best period to answer on the web and to be present in store and have physical demonstration. But we are able to set up people outside the store who can directly talk with the consumer. So by chat, of course, with your platform, and with live video demo on all in store, so you can directly show the product in store and explain to the consumer. Or if we talk about this space, being in this space and have all the range of the brand and be sure that they can have access to all the demonstrations possible.
So adding to the challenge that we have to face on the website, making sure that each brand has their own space on the website, we also have the challenge of making sure that all the humans are available at the right time and that you balance out those different resources at the right time, because obviously humans are not 24/7, they're not chatbots. Yeah. So you have to make sure that, you know, again, if you have someone, I don't know, in one region or someone in another region, they're not stepping on each other and making sure so that that whole configuration that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. No, very interesting. And so you you were asking a little bit about insights before. So as said previously, we've started this since June, so we have about 4 months. So it's a little bit early to make broad conclusions, and we've mostly focused at the moment on the electronics part. These are the first brands that were launched on this program were part of electronics industry. But we've I think today we can share maybe 3 to 4. Yeah, I'd call them insights, not necessarily results, but things that we've seen that keep coming back and that are kind of the new rule for this program and that we can use. And I think viewers can see it on the screen, but a few interesting things. So first of all, we've seen that you have to have an open conversation, not just between us, but between the retailer and the brand. This program will only work if everybody sits at the table and look at what would be the best experience. If brands and retailers work in silos, if they don't talk to each other, that won't work. So we encourage the brand to talk to all their retailers, to talk about the program, and the retailers to talk about their brands to make sure that they're all aligned on the goals they want to achieve. Obviously, when we talk about that, we want to talk about, what to keep in mind, and to keep in mind is the customer experience. We have to think about the customer at the end. We mentioned this, Christmas tree effect that, some of us experience on some websites where, you have, a zillion buttons that you can click on. The idea is, again, if I bring some brands, which brand should I bring? What makes more sense for my customer? What is the customer journey my visitor is going to experience, et cetera, to think about the customer first. That being said, what we've seen in the last few months, which was not necessarily a surprise, but a good reassurance, is one, now that we have respondents, so Texel respondents, focus on a specific brand and not just a retailer respondent focusing on everyone, we have no more missed opportunities, which means that if a client connects on the said website of the distributor and goes on that brand's product, every time that person has a question, there will be a person to answer. Obviously, there's always the chatbot 24/7, but we all know that when it comes to pre-sales activity, when it comes to giving real advice, expertise advice on how to buy and what would be the best thing, a human cannot be replaced at the moment. So very interesting that we have 0 missed opportunities for the last 4 months for the few brands that have launched this program. The other thing that we've seen is because the customers are now seeing that they're talking to the brand and not just a salesperson that's responsible for hundreds of different products, the level of expertise, the level of questions, of complexity of questions has really increased. So we have people that are asking very, very tough questions on some products. I mean, I've seen some of these conversations, for TVs or for computers. I wouldn't be able to answer them. And so that's probably an issue.
This is a job.
This is the job. And that's probably more an issue for you guys to actually train those people. But that's incredible because the customers in a matter of weeks have adapted to this, this new system and are making the best of it. Again, I don't know if you have one last word you would like to share with us. I mean, we're nearing the end of this session. Maybe.
We talked together about omni-channel strategy. Store is not dead, but digital need to humanize. For us, and the main message is these people need really to be trained to perform, as you explained just a few seconds ago. Consumers know now when they go in digital, they are super users, they have a lot of information. So where they come on the digital way to find some advice, they are more deeply in the brand. They are looking for precise information. So these people need to be trained a lot. This is the main message. So taking time to train these people because we need to be ready to match all the brand's requirements on the digital part with iAdvise.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our viewers for being with us today. Thank you again for joining us. And stay connected. The next session is a workshop about intelligent chatbots with our own Jérémy Richard, product manager at iAdvise. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question?
Hello, my name is Bert. I'm a musician and I work as a pro audio expert for Sennheiser since July 2019. Well, as a musician, I'm hanging out on Facebook quite a while, and I just saw an ad of Ibu for this specific mission and took part. As a musician and audio engineer, I'm quite familiar with the products of Sennheiser, so the quiz was easy to go through for me because I'm quite familiar with all the technical stuff, so I passed the test. I mostly like conversations where I can help the visitor solving a problem, because it's like an immediate feedback, and I really like that. If, for example, the visitor has a problem to establish a connection between his headphone and the Bluetooth transmitter, for example, then I can guide him through this process, and that's where my expertise comes in, because I did that a lot of times and can help him to do that step by step. I think that was a conversation about the iconic Sennheiser HD 600 headphones. It ended up being a bit of a tech talk between two gear-addicted nerds. So I think the whole chat lasted about 45 minutes, so that was a nice one.
Can I ask you a question?
Hello everyone. Hope everyone is well. You're probably thinking, another talk about AI, telling us how we need to implement AI everywhere without really trying to understand the reason. We are going to talk about AI, yes, but the sense of augmented intelligence. And as you will soon discover, a new revolution is in the making. But let's start with an observation. To manage two challenges of scalability and profitability for business, companies have turned massively to the automation offered by artificial intelligence to answer their customer questions. But the big comeback of chatbots in 2017 ends with an ambiguous conclusion. The promise of a great conversational experience at scale has not been delivered. Productivity gains have unfortunately come to the expense of customer experience, leading 2/3 of consumers to not longer trust chatbots. And that's a real problem. Why? Because too many bots have been deployed to deal with complex customer issues, where human interaction is still the most appropriate. Another observation is that hidden costs are still very significant when it comes to implement an automation strategy using AI. Beyond the obvious destruction of value associated with the unsatisfactory customer experience, 80% of the time spent deploying a chatbot is related to training, configuration, and maintaining of the AI. So, today, our workshop will focus on the new iAdvise Augmented Intelligence solution that will allow you to automate conversation in few clicks, as you will see, and respond in a very concrete way to finding the right answers. So let's start. What is the menu today? First, we'll focus on training your AI. You will see this is a child's play. After that, we'll have a focus on how to manage this library of intent. We'll do a demonstration on how to configure your intelligent bots through our new bot builder. After that, we'll see how KPIs and how you can analyze your automation strategy. And finally, we'll look at the roadmap and the potential candidates for 2021 and other next years. So let's start. Let's start to dig into a concrete example. Let's start to see how the collaborative training, how this power tool that we have developed can help you to train your AI at scale. For that, we'll develop a technology where on the left part of your screen you can see that we will gather all the past conversation of your website and also social network. Also, we'll gather all the visitor interaction. And on the right side, your contact center and in-house agent and EBU expert will help us to train this AI based on the past conversation. So this is like a bit not concrete. Let's see how this will be available in the iAdvise solution automation solution platform. For that, let's go and take a concrete example. An e-commerce website specialized in high-tech equipment, where thousands of conversations take place every day on different channels such as mobile, as you can see, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, but also website. All these conversations are a gold mine for understanding the question most frequently asked by your consumer. So thanks to our specialized machine learning algorithm, we group these similar expressions together so that we can identify the intent of your customer in your future automation strategy. So let's see concretely how this will work. Your agent will receive expression to review. This expression, is it similar of this one or not? And they will train your AI at scale during their day. Obviously, this will not take the place to the conversation. The priority will still answer human-to-human conversation, but when they will have the time, when they are free, they will be able to perform that. So, let's see how concretely this will be available in the next and the future the desk of iAdvise. So as you can see, they can review similar expression to a related intent. They can also select the best answer following a question. And in the future, they will be able to suggest answer directly from this collaborative training solution. Okay, so now let's take a look how this goldmine of customer information to automate your strategy can be concretely activated in your solution. So we'll see how the intent manager will help you to review and configure consumer intent detection. So on the left side, this is all the different expressions that we just review by our expert or agent. As you can see, there is topics around order status, product information, checkout problems. With the intent manager of iAdvise as an administration of your brand, you will be able to group and review this similar expression to create concrete intent that you will be able to use inside your automation strategy. Let's see now how the product directly will work. For that, we'll have this intent manager available in the platform where you will retrieve the different suggested similar phrases that you can review and validate and create, as you can see, an intent that will be available in your future bot strategy. Perfect. So now, let's move to the automation part by using intelligent bot. Through, and you will discover it, through the new bot builder. This new bot builder will allow you to create complex bot scenario. You will have different type of cards available for you, rich message, open-ended question to collect email, to collect name, phone number, multi-choice question, and the brand new card, intent detection question, where you will use and reuse what you just configure and what your workforce of agent help you to train your AI. So let's see how we can do this automation through this new card. You will be able to ask a generic question, an open question to your agent. What is your question? And configure the different intent. And say, this intent, I can configure it, and this intent goes to the next step. This intent transfer to an agent. This intent transfer to another specialized bot. And here, in our example, we are seeing that we can automate the tracking the order status, and we can send directly to the visitor the order status of his MacBook Air in this example. So this is a very simple example, but you will be able to multiply these different answers and have a more complex scenario to answer a lot of different visitor questions. Okay, so now we can say our AI is trained, our intelligent bot scenario is created and ready and is live on our different channels. And now, how can we analyze? How can we understand what is behind this strategy, and how can I reuse this analysis to improve my automation strategy? First, you will be able to visualize your customer journey through detailed reporting of your bot scenario. The drop-down rate between each step of your scenario, the detail when detecting an intent of your customer, of course, and also you will be able to have the satisfaction per branch of your scenario. So this is the micro analysis of your bot scenario. Let's see now how can we have a macro analysis of your bot. First, you will have the proportion of your conversation that are 100 or partially automated. You will have also the satisfaction associated to this different level of automation. You will have also a deeper view of your fully automated conversation, when you will see the completion rate, the drop-off rate, or the unavailable operation for transfer rate. And of course, you will have everything related to the artificial intelligence, so the intent detection. You will have the precision in detecting the intent of your customer. And you will have all the scoring to say, okay, this intent compared to another is well detected, or this one is less, the detection rate is very low compared of what I'm expected. So we see we have like a full platform now ready to be used to automate conversation. This is our first step in this automation strategy, combining AI power and human touch for impactful conversations. Let's see what we've planned for next year and what we plan for the next couple of years. We have some candidates that are ready to be discussed, and I will talk about that. First, we want next year to open our intelligent bots, to open there to third-party channels like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and maybe one day Apple Business Chat. We want also to integrate new languages in this iAdvise strategy, because today we have an AI compatible and with a very high performance in French and in English, but we want to open it to other languages to support more use cases and more like international brands. Other step will be to connect, and this is a really crucial part of our roadmap for next year, to connect this AI with CRM, custom APIs, or various connectors that you can have on your side. And this will allow you to gain in terms of automation and have the best answer that you can provide to your consumer. We'll also deliver some train intent libraries per vertical. So for example, if you are a bank, you will have access to a ready-to-use intent library for your business. Also, we'll enrich the AI with entities. Today we are able to detect intent. We'll go deeper in a level of more granularity with the entities. And the entities will be to detect, for example, a precise product, to detect like a special date or time that is explained in the visitor question. Also, we'll provide a versioning of bots that will allow you to retrieve your automation strategy in different moments. Last, we'll focus on two things. One is to, as you can see, collect customers' feedback during the conversation. And this is really crucial because today we are only measuring the satisfaction for the whole conversation. Here, what we want to do is to gather feedback during the conversation so that the visitor can tell you, okay, this answer is the right one, or this answer is not the right one. And last, we want to expand the collaborative training. So as you saw, the collaborative training today is allowing you to select and pin different expressions that are similar or not. But what we want to do is to go deeper to provide and to allow your agent to suggest answer directly, and that one suggested answer can benefit to thousands of conversations in your bot automation strategy. So thank you very much to participate to this workshop. It was a great pleasure to show you what we achieved, what our AI bot team achieved. So a huge congrats to them. Let's see how you will be able to deploy that in the future. And see you in 2 weeks for next event for Conversation 2020.
Can I ask you a question?